Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Jenny for Your Thoughts podcast. If you've listened to the first episode and you are back, I am number one a little bit surprised because and I'm delighted because it's obviously a sign that I haven't annoyed you, or maybe you want to hear what I have to say. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Jenny for Your Thoughts podcast. So, this is the second ever episode that I will be recording. If you have listened to the first episode, I just want to say a massive thank you. And I obviously haven't annoyed you or bored you enough, because if you're back for the second one, I obviously am doing something semi-right. So yeah, that is amazing, and I'm so happy to have you back in this space. So maybe before we start, I just want to say I hope you are doing okay. It might be a nice thing to just check in with yourself and just ask yourself, how are you doing today? Because I think a lot of the time we don't actually take a second to just sit and say, how am I actually feeling? It sounds really simple, but like a lot of people are so unaware that they're in this extreme fight or flight mode. So what I mean by that is just consistently go, 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 never take a break, go straight from work to the gym, to cooking dinner, to minding kids, to meeting friends, to blah, 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 straight to bed. There's no time to just stop and say, how am I doing? Whatever your name is. How is Jen doing? How is John doing? How am I actually feeling right now? Can I feel my body? Is my heart racing? Do I have a headache? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Just take a second to be like, how am I doing? So that probably sounds a little bit strange. It might feel a little bit weird to some people because a lot of people don't take a couple of even seconds to just sit and be. And I think it's so important. We live such busy lives. So many of us have lots of things going on, like whether it's work, whether it's socializing, whether it's minding kids, our hobbies, social media, personal issues, personal difficulties, relationships. There's a million different things going on in everyone's life. And I think we forget that stress can come from so much. I suppose stress comes from so much more than the stereotypical stressful things. Like, okay, if you think of stress, you think of like crying in a corner, you think of fighting with a parent or fighting with your boyfriend or arguing, or stress might be failing an exam or prepping for an exam. But stress comes in so many different forms, not just the quote unquote negative associations we have of stress. Like sometimes it's stressful to go out and have a few drinks with friends because like you're revving yourself up, you're getting anxious about getting ready. It can also be stressful like playing a sport, going to the gym. Maybe if we have a bad night's sleep, that might be a bit stressful. Maybe if we're out for the whole day exploring a new place, like that can be kind of stressful, like because, and it's not necessarily negative, like it's not like we're in despair, but it's like it can be stressful because we can be tired, we can be on the go, we can be very stimulated. And if we have loads of different things throughout our day that are piling on top of each other, you're going to be quite a stressed human. And a lot of people are, I don't want to say blissfully unaware because it's not blissfully, like it's not a blissful thing to be unaware of this, but people are so unaware that actually all the little things they're doing in their day is adding on to their stress. They look at their life and they think, oh no, I'm just stressed because I was at work. But it's like, no, your whole weekend you had 1 million different things on and you never took a second to just relax. you know? And when you do relax, what is it that you do? Do you watch like horror movies? Obviously that's, well, I don't know who would watch a horror movie to relax. I mean, look, everyone, I'm actually no judgment, but like, what do you do when you're relaxing? Like, do you go and meet loads of friends and you're all chatting and it's very stimulating and it's, again, very like intense? Or do you take time to just be, relax, sit? And do you give yourself full permission to do so? Because this is something I see in a lot of people where they are quote unquote relaxing, but they don't give themselves permission to relax. So they're sitting there lying on the couch, feeling really guilty about lying on the couch. So you're not actually relaxing. Relaxing can be described, in my opinion, as both physically and mentally relaxing. Yes, you might be sitting, not moving, but if you're not relaxing it in your head, like, you're not actually relaxing, you're not resting fully. You have to truly embrace that relaxing period and allow all parts of your body to relax, not just the physical, because the mind is so powerful and we won't get much from resting if our mind is beating, I suppose, giving out to us for resting. That's not resting. That's just even more stress, you know? And this is something that I used to find really hard. And what I've been noticing within myself recently is I am on the go all day. So I'll get up really early, I'll do the gym, I'll do my check-ins, I'll do a bit of work, I'll do some Instagram post, I'll do some calls, I'll do reply to messages, blah, blah, blah. And like I could be going from 7 in the morning and then, yes, I might finish my day at like 5 in the evening and I come in the door and in my head I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm done work at 5 and I switch off. But because I've been so stimulated for the whole day, when I come home at 5 or 6 or whatever and sit down, yes, technically I might have 4 or 5 hours where I'm quote unquote not doing anything or quote unquote trying to relax. But because I haven't given myself any break throughout the day, I've been so overly stressed all day, not even from a negative place, but just being so busy, that I don't get anything from the evening of relaxing because I can't relax. I'm like floored when I come in the door. So like, you have to have that bit of balance throughout the day as well, where you give yourself some moments of time to check in with yourself. Like, yes, okay, we might work from 9 to 5, but like, if that 9 to 5 is like an extreme just stress bomb, you're not going to be able to switch off in the evening because you're just so stimulated, you know? Yeah, so I don't even know how that tangent came, but I'm just allowing it. I'm allowing it to flow because I think we kind of started the episode with checking in with ourselves, and I suppose that kind of led on to me talking about how important it is to just give yourself that full permission to rest, because that permission makes such a difference. And if you're not intentional with your resting, I feel like you just don't get the same benefit from it. Like if you just rest and it's kind of a fluke that you rested, you don't fully get what you need. Whereas if you're like, I'm designating this evening to be with myself or to relax or to whatever it is, putting an intention with it makes it so much more, you just get much more from that. So this second episode, I think what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a insight to my mind and an insight to things that I'd like to call them like light bulb moments, I suppose, realizations, current things that have cropped up for me where I'm like, oh my God, like a bit of a, I don't want to like say aha moments, but kind of aha moments, if that makes sense. So sometimes when I have them, I write them down in my journal. I have my journal here, and I know you're probably hearing that and you're thinking, oh Lord, another person who journals, whatever. I used to think that. I used to think it was a load of, you know, like, oh, I just can't journal. I mean, I never, I suppose, I was just, I don't want to say closed off to journaling, but I kind of thought it was just something that people wanted to show off that they do. Like, oh, I journal, it's a part of my morning routine, and it's this, perfectly aesthetic and influency thing to do. Like, journal your thoughts. And I don't know, I just thought it was a little bit, like, I can't explain it. I used to just think it was a load of bullshit. Like I thought with a lot of things in life. But I think what makes us a little bit reluctant to journaling is the concept of calling it journaling. Like, it's like journaling. It's like, no, you're just like writing down things. I'm calling it journaling because that's kind of what everyone says. But like, I don't really call it that myself. I kind of call it just writing down how I'm feeling. And that kind of helps more. That, for me, that seems more appealing. If I say to myself, oh, I'm going to journal, it just kind of like, I'm just kind of like, oh, like, no. I'd rather say to myself, I'm just going to write down how I'm feeling. Or I'm just going to write down thoughts in my head. Or I'm just going to do a bit of a brain dump and throw everything on the page. And when you take that name or that calling it journaling away, I think it takes the pressure off. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense in my own head, so hopefully it resonates with some people. But anyway, so when I have these like realizations, which I've been having a lot of recently, that sounds like I'm crazy saying like it sounds like I'm talking about like these like big moments of like, I don't know, I'm picturing this like moment where like light comes above me, but no, it's not like that. It just might be a little thought, or like I might just think about something and I'm like, oh, that actually makes sense, or that's interesting, or I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, so I have a list of random things that come up in my brain sometimes, and I'm like, I'd actually like to talk about that with someone, but I have no one to talk about with. So now I have you guys to share it with, okay? So yeah, I'm just gonna have a look here and see what comes up for me. So the first thing that I have here is what triggers you is what you need to work on. This is something that came up a couple of weeks ago for me, actually probably 2 months ago now, and it makes so much sense because this can be in any area, okay? Like, you might look at something, or you might see something, or you might hear something about someone or something, whatever, and it might really, really bother you or really, really trigger you. And the first thing that we think of, well, for me anyway, when I become triggered by something, the kind of first initial feeling I have is anger towards that person, or like resentment, in a way of like, that's so mean of them. Like, why would they make me feel that way? Or why is that the case? Why do they have to do that? It's like this, like, it's all that person's fault. It's all the other, I'm the victim here and they're triggering me. They're the issue. But over the last couple of weeks, I've just realized, actually, maybe I'm the problem. And not in a mean way, not me being like, I'm the issue, I need to sort myself out. It's more like, no, maybe it's things that I need to work on that's causing me to feel triggered. Because, we will go through life, and there's very weird people. There's, like, people are just strange. The human brain, humans in general, are just too complex, and we are so odd at times, and we do things without thinking. We might do things that are odd. We do things that are just, you can't explain sometimes, okay? And someone might do a certain thing, and you might be very triggered by it. But that's not their problem. Like, that's them. And the only person you have full control over is you. And you can't change how a certain person reacts to something, what a certain person does in life. You can't control a certain individual in the way they respond. Like, depending on how they are formed genetically, depending on their life experience, depending on the environment, depending on their past. Like, they're going to respond to situations in the way that they need to. And if you're triggered by that, that might be something that you need to work on a bit further. And I don't know if that's kind of making sense, but I'll give you an example. And this is one that has come up a lot for me recently. And it's one that it's actually quite interesting for me to look back on, because it's like, wow, it just shows, number one, that I've come a long way. And number two, I have a lot of compassion for people who may get triggered. One example is me right now, in my present body, with my present life, my routine, my job, my personality, just everything about me right now. That would have really triggered me 5 years ago. So I would have really triggered myself. Like, if I was to follow myself on Instagram back 5 years ago, when I was still very much in my eating disorder, still very much very young. Obviously, I was only 16. I had a lot to learn. I was still unwell. I had a lot going on. And if I was to follow me right now, my present self on Instagram, I would have found myself very triggering. But looking at myself now, I feel like I promote quite a positive page. You know, I like to share a lot of things that I feel benefit a lot of people. And therefore, that 16-year-old self, she was the girl that needed to work on things. I'm not the one. The 21-year-old Jen doesn't need to change a thing about her Instagram. She promotes a healthy and positive space for people. But the 16-year-old Jen needs to work on herself, needs to overcome certain things, you know. The fact that 16-year-old Jen is triggered by someone training in a gym, triggered by someone who may eat a certain way, triggered by someone who is able to eat out, triggered by someone who posts pictures of their body. Like, none of that is unhealthy. But the fact that the 16-year-old self was triggered by that, that's because that 16-year-old girl had a lot of learning to do, a lot of recovering to do, and a lot of healing to do. And this can be in, I know I'm giving kind of an eating disorder perspective of it, but it could be in another way of, like, if you're triggered by someone who is overly confident, or you're triggered by someone who, you know, is out in public doing a YouTube video, or out in public doing something a little bit out there, and you're kind of triggered, or it bothers you, it's like, actually, it's probably because you're too judgmental of yourself doing that. So you're judging yourself in that position. And this is kind of going on to the second topic, where it kind of falls nicely into it, of when we judge other people, we're judging ourselves in that situation. And I think this is a really good way of understanding what we may need to work on and what we may find difficult. And I have another example here of this, where I used to be quite judgmental of people who would record themselves in the gym, or record themselves just out and about, or take pictures of themselves, or, you know, that kind of thing. I used to think, oh, they're so vain, or why do they feel the need to do that? Like, can they not just not do that? And it was because I was too afraid to do that. And my subconscious mind was judging myself in that situation. But now that I'm confident enough to record myself in a gym, to take pictures of myself and post them, I don't judge other people for doing that. Yet, I have friends who would still judge other people for doing that, because they don't feel confident enough to do it themselves. And this is kind of similar to, like, talking on your story on Instagram. Oh my God, like, back in the day, if someone spoke on their story, you'd be like, oh my God, who does she think she is, speaking on her story? Like, she literally thinks she's a celebrity. And I'm actually not afraid to say that, because I think most people can relate to that, and they can, I mean, you mightn't admit it to other people, but we all judge, you know, like, as a human, it's a normal thing to do. It's a normal human experience to be judgmental at times, you know. We're not a bad person for judging people. And I think it's actually a very good thing and a good trait in a person to be able to acknowledge when judgment comes up. So, yeah, in the past, I may have judged certain people for speaking on their stories. Like, it was fine for, I don't know, Kim Kardashian to talk on her story, but if someone that wasn't well known spoke, it was like, why is she doing that? But it's like, well, everyone has to start somewhere. And now that I speak on my story, I would never bat an eyelid at someone else talking on their story. Because first of all, I understand. And second of all, it's like, I don't have a fear of doing it myself. I'm confident enough to do it myself. So now that other people are doing it and I see them, I'm like, cool, like, go for it. Like, I'm nearly like, I actually want to give that person a hug because I'm like, we are in this together. But I know that for people who don't speak on their stories, there is going to be that level of judgment there because they don't fully understand maybe what it's like to do that. And secondly, they wouldn't personally do it themselves. But just because you wouldn't do something yourself doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean someone else can't do it. So I think that's like the judgment piece is a really good way to understand maybe what your subconscious mind isn't allowing you to do. So that's another thing that's been on my mind recently. And I've become really aware of it, and I'm able to very catch myself if I am judging someone. And if I do judge someone for whatever reason it is, I'm kind of like, okay, you're having these thoughts about whatever. Why do you think that is? And I think like another example of this is seeing someone dancing in the gym. You know, they have their headphones in, they're kind of bopping along, and it's like, you know, someone might look at them and be like, oh God, like, what are they doing? But it's like, actually, you're probably just judging yourself in that situation. Like, you wouldn't do that. But that doesn't mean you have to judge that person, you know? Like, that's their own thing. They're doing their thing. They're having fun. And it's like, so what, you know? So the next realization / light bulb moment for me is that getting other people's opinions can be a great thing, but you always have to take it with a pinch of salt. And you always have to just be mindful, first of all, of who's giving you the opinion, whether you asked for it or not, and do you respect their advice, I suppose, and not even in a way of like, I don't respect them as a person, but it's like, do you value what they have to say, you know? So first of all, I think getting the opinion of others and getting support, getting validation, it's all a very healthy thing because I think as humans, we're social beings. We thrive off connection. We thrive off being around people. And, you know, a lot of people will say, no, you shouldn't rely on others' validation. You can't rely. You have to validate yourself. And, like, that's all true. But at the end of the day, we still need some reassurance at times. And we need validation at times. You know, you can't go through life just validating yourself and never, ever having input from anyone else. Otherwise, I think you'd go a bit mad, you know? Like, it's nice to hear that someone else thinks you're doing well. It's nice to hear that someone likes your outfit. It's nice to hear that someone enjoys your content on Instagram. I don't know, whatever it is, you know? Like, whether you write a book or you sing a song, like, it's nice to hear that people like your voice, but there's a fine line too. And when we ask people their opinion or ask them for advice on certain situations, what's really key to remember is that their opinion or their advice is based on their life and what they've experienced. So if you ask someone something, let's say, for example, me setting up this podcast, okay? I might ask someone, what do you think of me talking about this? What do you think of me talking about that? In my mind, I kind of know that I want to do X, Y, and Z. I know the podcast I want to deliver. I know the topics I want to talk about, and it feels authentic to me. If I ask someone their opinion, they might bash my idea, They might tell me they think I should do it this way, I should do it that way. And it's like, it's important to take people's advice on board at times, but it's really important to remember that maybe the person that says that to me, first of all, is judging themselves in my situation, probably is in a very different position in life. Like maybe they don't have a social media presence, maybe they don't speak in their stories, maybe they don't have their own business, maybe they are much older, maybe they're younger, maybe they're a boy. Like, so much influence can impact a person's advice, and I think that's why it's so important to take everything with a pinch of salt, because sometimes you just have to go with your own gut. It's really nice to get the opinion of others and the validation from others, but if someone gives you advice and you feel a bit like, oh God, that's not what I wanted to hear, it's a sign that you were actually looking for validation, not advice, because if you're a bit disheartened by someone's quote unquote advice, it probably means that you want someone to reaffirm what you're already thinking. And that's kind of different, in my opinion, for asking for advice. I think validation is very different, because it's like, no, validation is like, I know what I'm thinking and I want someone else to just make sure that what I'm thinking is correct. Whereas advice is like, I actually don't know what I'm doing. I'd like someone to give me their opinion or what they would do. So yeah, regardless of whether it's advice, validation, the opinion of others, I think understanding that whatever that person says to you is going to be based on their complete life experience, as well as their environment, as well as their own beliefs, as well as literally how well they slept the night before. Like, someone's opinion could change on a daily basis. Like, my opinion of things has changed so much on so many things. Like, my opinion changes all the time. And this is actually flowing nicely into the next bit of a realization that I've had, which is we are actually always wrong. And I'm just going to let that sink in for a second. That what we are saying, or what we are maybe doing in life, I feel like it's always wrong, but we're always less wrong. That probably makes no sense. But essentially what I mean is, if I look back at myself a year ago and I think about what I used to think, I think about maybe what I spoke about, maybe what I talked about on Instagram, looking back now, I'm thinking, God, I was actually a bit wrong, or like, that wasn't actually that accurate. And in my head, I'm like, now I'm less wrong. Like, now I speak about things in a more mindful way, or I speak about things with a bit more education. But in a year's time, I'll probably look back at myself now and think, God, I was actually still a bit wrong. You know what I mean? So it's like this realization that we're always a little bit inaccurate, and it's like, but we're slowly getting less inaccurate. So we're slowly becoming less wrong over time. And I think that's a really nice way to think about life, is that as we go through life, we're just consistently getting less wrong and getting less inaccurate and getting more true, I suppose. And I think that's such a nice way to think about life, because it's like, when we're born, okay, we have this, like, we're just this, like, canvas, and we're just oblivious to everything. And slowly life chips away at it. And I suppose just before we die, I feel like we'll be at the core of ourselves, that we are the most true and less wrong version of ourselves, where we're the most knowledgeable, we're the most mindful, we're the most open-minded. Because as you grow, as you get older, as you go through life and experience things, you're just learning so much. And I feel like, yeah, that's kind of the thought I've had in my head, that we're always just, you will always look back at yourself and think, God, what was I thinking? Or, oh, that's so cringe. How did I say that? How did I think that? How did I do that? And it's like, in that moment, you thought what you were doing was the best thing to do. And I think that's such a, it's quite cool. Like, even if I look back at 6 months ago, I'm like, God, like, I've actually grown a lot. Like, I've come on a lot. And but it's important as well not to look back at that kind of thing and think, oh God, like, what was I thinking? Instead you should be thinking, you know, me 2 years ago, I was doing my absolute best. Like, that's what I thought I needed to do. That's what I thought was the right thing. And I was authentic to me. I was sharing what I believed. I was sharing what I was going through. And in that moment, that was the most quote unquote accurate I could have had. Looking back now, if I was to speak about those things too, like right now, that wouldn't be as accurate as I could be, because I've learned lots since then. But yeah, I think that kind of goes on to another thing, that like we are always doing our best. And I think if you look back at a time in your life and you kind of think of it as a bad time, or you think of it as like, oh, I wasn't a great person then, or I didn't do great things, or I wasn't a great friend, I wasn't a good daughter, or a wife, or a husband, or a whatever it is. It's like, okay, it's great that you can acknowledge that, but also remember that in that given moment, you were probably doing your absolute best, and your best changes all the time. Like, your best on any given day is going to be different. For example, when you're having a really good day, your best is going to be doing all the tasks that you want to do. It could be getting up at 6 a.m., going for a run, making a really balanced breakfast, lunch, and dinner, having a savage day at work, maybe going to the gym as well, maybe getting a really good night's sleep. Like, that's quote unquote your best day for an amazing day, okay? But your best on a day that you feel really sad could literally just be getting out of bed and showering. And that is, on both of those days, that's you giving 100%. But I think it's so important to be able to understand that your best and your 100% effort is going to change every single day. And that's why it's so key not to look at a day and think, God, I did so bad today, or I didn't get everything I needed to get done. And it's like, yeah, but not every day is the day to do that. Like, you will have days where you feel on fire and want to go and achieve 1 million different things. And that's amazing. Like, when we feel like that, go with it. But sometimes you will wake up and feel absolutely awful. And you need to set your expectations lower. Because for you to try achieve your 100 tasks on a day that you feel really bad is you trying to do 500%. So your 100% effort is going to change depending on so many factors, okay? We are always trying our best. And it's really, really important to tap into that and be able to say, okay, I am not feeling great today, so I am not going to expect myself to do the million tasks I have written down. Instead, I'm going to set my expectations that bit lower for myself, because that is me being 100% today. And that is all I can manage. And guess what? That's okay. Otherwise, if you continue to push yourself to do all these crazy things every day and be this overachiever all the time, you're just going to burn yourself out, and you're going to have to take an extended period of time off everything, you know? Another thing that I've thought about as well is the fact that when people do not so nice things, or they do something that isn't that respectful, or just something that has hurt you, or not even hurt you, maybe they've hurt someone else, maybe they've just done something bad in general, or something unkind. I've been thinking that everyone thinks that what they're doing is probably the right thing for them to do. And this really helps me when I'm thinking about maybe a disagreement I've had with someone, or an argument, or just a situation where someone has done something that I'm like, why did someone do that? Or, yeah, just something that's upset me. And I think, okay, it's not that I put myself in their shoes, but I say to myself, they are doing what they feel like is the right thing for them. And I'm always preaching that, you have to look after yourself, you have to do what's best for you. And if you can't take that and apply to others as well, then it's kind of pointless, because you could be really upset that your friend cancelled plans on you, or you could be really upset that, someone couldn't do the thing they told you they'd do. But if you're going around preaching that you need to be there for yourself and you need to, be your number one best friend, then you need to understand other people too. And not even, and that's not me saying like let people away with doing really shitty things in life. But like sometimes if we can just remind ourselves that, okay, what they've done is shit, what they've done is mean, what they've done is not the best thing that they could have done. But it's what they probably thought was the right thing for them to do in that moment. Part of that just makes me feel a bit better about the situation, and I don't feel as hurt. And this isn't about making the other person look good. It's about making you feel more at peace with yourself. So, like, if someone has done something really, really nasty, that's not to say that they haven't still done something really horrible. But reminding yourself that, okay, what they did, they probably had some valid reason in their own head to do it. And in their own head, it was okay. In their own head, it was right. Or in their own head, it was the best option available to them in that given moment. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a genuine mistake and the person is thinking, Jesus Christ, why did I do that? But I think having that open mind that that person probably thinks what they did was the best thing for them in that situation, or what they needed to do. I just think everyone has to do what they have to do in life, and there's always another side to a story. And you can definitely pick up a person very wrong, especially if like it's over text that you might have an argument, or if like you don't hear their full side of the story, or if you chat to them just this once off time and you just place your own opinion on the situation. It's like there's always more to it. And I spoke about this in the previous episode, but like you just never know what's going on in someone's life either. So like just reminding yourself of that too. And I really don't want that to come across as me being like, if someone is literally bullying you or doing something horrible, that you should just say, oh, they're just doing their best. That's not what I mean. But I'm talking about just like little things that people do that might piss you off. Just reminding yourself that they've probably done that for their own interest, and that's what they just needed to do in that given moment. Still might be a bit annoying, but it kind of allows you to feel a bit more at peace because you're not like really angry. I don't know. That just allows me to feel more at ease with things if there is disagreements that come up. So the last thing I'm going to touch on is the concept of being recovered enough. And I say enough in inverted commas, or being semi-recovered from an eating disorder. It could be more than semi-recovered. It could be 80% recovered, But I use the phrase recovered with a bit of a caveat, because I believe we're always recovering. Not in a way of you're always in recovery, you never get better, but in a way of we're always actually improving our relationship with food. Because even like I've found in the last couple of weeks being out in Bali, I've faced some challenges with my relationship with food, and it's really helped me. I'm eating out so much more. Like back home, I don't eat out that much, maybe like once or twice a week, whereas here I'm eating out every day. And like at the beginning, that is a little bit uncomfortable, especially when like, I do really value my nutrition. I like knowing what I'm eating in a way of like, I'm fueling my body with X, Y, and Z. Whereas out here, it's much more spontaneous. I'm going out for dinner most nights. I'm getting breakfast. I don't know exactly what I'm eating. And that can cause a little bit of discomfort, but I'm really sitting with that and allowing it to help my relationship with food. So yes, I would say to someone, I no longer have an eating disorder, but I'm still very much moving along my recovery, you know? Like, I don't like to say I'm in recovery because I'm definitely gone past that stage of being identified or identifying with an eating disorder, but I do believe that we are always on that recovery journey, and it's lovely to think that we can continue to just keep getting better and better in that way. But this idea that we can very much settle for being semi-recovered, and this might go for a lot of things, not just an eating disorder. It might be depression as well, anxiety. It could be fear of anything. Like, people have fears of lots of different things. And I think settling for being semi-recovered is something that happens a lot of people because it's so much better than you were, but it's a huge disservice to you as an individual to decide that you're going to just be okay with 60%. You know, okay, I'm not miserable. My life isn't as horrific as it used to be. Yes, I'm eating a bit more. Yes, I feel better. But I could be so much happier. Don't settle for this half recovered, better than I was, but not where I want to be, okay? You've done the really, really hard bit, okay? That's not to say the next bit is going to be easy, but what I'm saying is if you've gotten this far, you can keep going and you can get to the end, okay? So I think, you know, on Instagram, online, just in general, a lot of eating disorder talk is based on people who are on the verge of beginning recovery. You know, it's like, you have to recover, just go for it. But I think that kind of population of people in between who are in the middle of their recovery have potentially gained the weight, so now they're quote unquote healthy, but their mind is still not a nice place to be. They're the people that I feel are forgotten about because, you know, it's awful, but in Ireland anyway, like, you have to be quote unquote in critical condition to actually receive any proper support, which is a joke because an eating disorder doesn't have a size. But I just think if you are a person who has come a long way, your mindset is much better. You know, you're able to eat regularly. Maybe you've challenged a lot of fear foods, but there's still things there. Do not settle for good enough, okay? Good enough is not good enough for you. You deserve a life free of food guilt. You deserve a life that is completely relaxed, where you can rest, you can take some time off the gym when you want, you can eat some takeaway when you want, you can have a couple of drinks, you can sit and not think for a second about food. Like, that can happen. So do not settle for just being a little bit better. I know you've come so far, and I know it's very tempting to say, no, I'll just put up with this, it's fine. Like, I'll just hold on to a couple of behaviours because it's good enough, you know. It's not good enough. And you've come this far. You didn't come this far to just come this far. You came this far to keep going, okay? So yeah, that's what I'm going to finish the episode on, because my time in this studio is going to be very much up soon. They're going to be knocking on the door, but I really hope you've taken something from this episode. It's such a pleasure to connect with everyone here. I just want to send you all so much love. I want to give everyone a massive hug, and I really hope to see you in the next episode. So thank you so much. If you haven't already, please do hit the subscribe, I think it is, or the following button, or whatever it is. And I would love if you could leave a 5-star review. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much, and we will chat very soon.